Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Carruth Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 2004 movie titled The Door in the Floor. Now, The Door in the Floor is a tragedy drama with a hint of comedy, which runs for an hour and 51 minutes long. It is directed and written by Tod Williams, based on a novel by John Irving. It is produced by Anne Carey, Michael Corrente, and Ted Hope. The music is done by Marcelo Zarvos, the cinematography by Terry Stacy, and the editing by Afonso Gonçalves, distributed by Focus Features. And it stars Jeff Bridges, Kim Basinger, John Foster, Elle Fanning, Mimi Rogers, Bijou Phillips, and John Rothman. The story goes something like this. Successful children's author and illustrator Ted Cole, played by Jeff Bridges, lives with his wife, Marion, played by Kim Basinger, and his young daughter, Ruth, played by Elle Fanning. And they reside in the Long Island's East Hamptons beach area. Ted takes in a young intern named Eddie O'Hare, played by John Foster, not to necessarily build his writing skills, but to do menial jobs like driving him to places. The Cole clan is not particularly on happy terms right now, after the severe tragic death of their two adolescent sons, Timmy and Tommy. Now this is where Eddie kind of faces up to a more catalyst role, but still willing to do whatever initiatives it takes for him to build up his competent skills as a writer. But it appears as though as if Ted and Marion have visions of one of their sons manifested in Eddie's soul, and they take their approach to him in a much contrasting perspective. Ted, of course, is using him as a free designated driver and a babysitter for their young daughter Ruth, while Marion is using Eddie for more lustful pleasures. Now, what did I think of this movie? Well, I think this is a very engaging drama about trying to cope with grief and what kind of steps must be taken in order to try to move forward. The Door in the Floor is very much about character understanding, which not just reflects towards the audience, but to each other as well. Writer-director Tod Williams approaches this very sensitive story very precautiously, and of course he handles it with the greatest of care. The movie is truly saturated with loads of emotion, and the performances by veterans like Jeff Bridges and Kim Basinger make this movie all the more intriguing. The once loving relationship between Ted and Marion had become crumbled after the deaths of their two sons. The worst part is that they know each other's vulnerabilities, and they take great advantage of each other's grief quite differently. Ted has grown on to become an alcoholic and has also become a philanderer to divorced wives. While Marion's way of coping with grief is that she just can't believe her two sons have been taken away too soon and has become virtually withdrawn from society. But it wasn't until Eddie that comes into the fray, and their lives have taken a sudden impact. Now, many people, of course, in the past have frowned upon book-to-movie adaptations, and many audiences have frowned upon it, mostly because a lot of book-to-movie adaptations tend to leave out a lot of details And at times, many of the details from the book, like very important stuff, have been completely omitted from the movie scripts. But Williams here, he focuses on the first third of John Irving's novel, which was A Widow for 1 Year. And the movie script was very provocative, and the characters are what we might have expected from the novel to be. Bridges' character as a children's author seems like a guy who comes across as being kind of a no-nonsense individual. He's everything you would expect from an eccentric artist, not afraid of roaming around the house naked and exposing his complex lifestyles towards his fresh new intern, Eddie. Eddie, he's still green and inexperienced, and is used as nothing more than a designated driver to Ted so that he may continue pursuit to drown his sorrows in the drink. He really shows no care of helping the young man improving his writing skills. Meanwhile, Marion seems to be living a double life. She has now become a stoic, stone-faced beauty of wonder, where she touches no one and no one touches her. The other life comes out from the past, which is a myriad of framed photographs hanging across her corridor of her two sons when they were alive. This kind of grief is about as real as you could get, as she just can't get past the fact that her sons are dead and just doesn't want to let go. She practically enjoys the company of her 4-year-old daughter Ruth, played by Elle Fanning, and when she freely lets Eddie lure his sexual fascinations with her, it's like she is giving him his liberation as a token of appreciation and nothing more. And also, which in a strange, bizarre human twist, both Ted and Marion see something in common with Eddie, and that is that Eddie bears a somewhat physical and maybe even psychological resemblance towards one of their sons. Pretty strange, don't you think? Which is contrary. Whereas Marion's sexual fantasies feel more like a liberating, let it out of your system type of facade, Ted's ways of sexual fantasies seem to take a more amiable, aggressive approach, especially towards his model for hire, Evelyn Vaughn, played by Mimi Rogers, which shifts his fondness to a more forceful obsessiveness. The final moments of the film is quite abrupt as Eddie starts to take a pivotal step towards his writing career. It's everything that he's encountered has been forgotten as he goes away at doodling words on a notepad at a framing shop. Now, many people, of course, also frowned upon the fact that shortly after Marion's sexual fantasies with Eddie, she eventually, I guess, maybe overtaken by the grief, decides to move away from Ted and goes as far as to abandon her daughter, Ruth. And now it's up to Ted to look after Ruth. And I think, a lot of people had been frowned upon. But I don't see why they should frown upon Marion. She's gone through a very difficult times, and I think, okay, maybe she may have took a step too far to abandon Ruth, but at the same time, you also have to take notice that, she's grieving, and she just can't let go, and I guess her only way to let go is to simply get away from it all, start a new life, have a new beginning. Maybe the grief was just too much for her to take. And I think that that's what maybe was misconstrued by many of the audience members. But the thing is, what makes this movie also quite fascinating is the little nuances that make the film more than just a typical psychological drama. The sights, the smells, the colors, they all add significantly to this emotionally charged story of tragedy. The title of the movie is also a metaphor. It's the door that awaits you to a world that's just too grim to converse with even further. The door in the floor is a symbol of a final resting place for the soul that no one cannot escape from, where the world is a cruel place and the grief and pain is something that you must overcome but can never be completely erased. So if I was to rate this movie out of 10, I would definitely give it an 8. The cinematography was purely excellent. Writer-director Tod Williams really did handle the story with care. And because of the fact that Tod Williams did excel in the field of art, the visuals is definitely pure eye candy, so that's also something to take into consideration. Personally, I think that both Jeff Bridges and Kim Basinger turned in such great, wonderful performances. Elle Fanning, who is the little sister of Dakota Fanning, also exhibits such true acting skills, just following the footsteps of her older sister, and she plays her role quite sublimely. Usually I frown upon a lot of kid actors and actresses. Some of them come across as being kind of annoying, but she comes across as being very adorable, and she doesn't act like a 4-year-old acting like a 15-year-old. She is a 4-year-old living the life as a 4-year-old. The characters in this movie are very real, and unless you've experienced tragedy, maybe these people may probably would have understood the movie better. But if you never faced this kind of tragedy, then maybe a lot of people may have misconstrued the movie entirely, or subliminally. But I think we should all take a look and try to understand grief a little bit better. Some people could overcome grief in many ways. Some people would take grief better than others. In the case of Ted, he still seems somewhat coherent, while Marion just can't seem to let go. Everybody looks at grief in a different perspective. People just decide to do other things to occupy their time as a way to overcome grief, while others just keep it in them. And both Ted and Marion Cole demonstrated the differences of how each of them handled grief, and I think they did a very, very fascinating job. So I think this kind of ends my writer review. Thank you so much. If you like to write in, please feel free to do so. Remember, be kind, be courteous, and I will be back with another movie review. So until next time, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.